Hi, everybody. My name is Patrick Fisher. I'm the Executive Director of Erie Arts and Culture. I apologize that I can't be with you live for the meeting, but I'm thankful for the opportunity to be able to meet today with Anna to go over a presentation about Kaleidoscope Grove, an interactive public art piece that is slated to be installed in Erie's urban core. In total, there are two installations. One is dedicated to Erie's West Bayfront neighborhood, and the other is dedicated to Erie's East Bayfront neighborhood. I'm going to go over the project a little bit to give some insight about how we got to where we are today. And then I'm going to have a conversation with Anna where I can answer perhaps some of your questions so that you can all feel more comfortable about this project moving forward. So a little bit about this project background. It's actually been about 3 years in the making. So in 2018, Erie Arts and Culture received a Shaping Tomorrow grant from the Erie Community Foundation. And part of our grant application called for creating what I will call sister sculptures to again be installed in East Erie and West Erie. So we started that work in 2019 when we similarly had a Neighborhood Assistance Program grant from Erie Insurance and the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development. As part of that initiative, we paired together two artists, one from Erie and the other from just outside of Erie. So we paired together Shasti O'Leary Sudant, who is a established artist and professor of design, with Esther Ortiz. Esther is a self-taught piñata artist here in Erie with really great intuition and really great design. And they started leading a series of community engagement sessions to learn more about the present sentiment and mentality of those who reside in Erie's urban core. And that started in 2019 and it carried on into 2020. And then obviously the world changed somewhat as a result of the pandemic. So a little bit about Shasti. So Shasti O'Leary Sudant is a transdisciplinary artist, designer, and writer who investigates the interstitial space between the digital and the physical in an effort to create allegories that explore and talk about power dynamics. For the last 7 years, she has created boldly colored monumental sculpture installations inspired by philosophy, politics, and scientific concepts that investigate public engagement and interaction. Using a wide range of media and materials to create these immersive experiences, she aims to explore hidden systems that draw attention to ideas surrounding human relationships, balance, and homogeny. And Shasti has work throughout the United States. As I mentioned, she's just north of us in Buffalo, and there's some public sculptures of her there in Buffalo. But she has sculptures throughout other cities in the United States as well, including Jacksonville, Florida, which is how I met her when I was down there working for the Council of Greater Jacksonville. And a little bit about Esther. Esther Ortiz grew up in California with 8 sisters. Her parents did not have much money, so they all made everything. One sister was a baker, many were musicians, others were dress designers. Esther was the party person. Even as a young child, she would plan and make party crafts. Esther loves making things with her hands, and she's self-taught, and she has taught herself how to create piñatas. Esther can make the traditional form, but also piñatas of cartoon characters, wedding cakes, Air Jordan sneakers, avocados, and other contemporary objects. She loves thinking creatively and using her sense of humor. Esther is the only piñata maker in our region. So the reason we paired Esther and Shasti is because their design aesthetics aligned quite well, but we also wanted to build the capacity of Esther. When we met Esther, she was working primarily in just cardboard and paper, and she was making work that was 2 feet tall or less. Now she's making massive pieces. She's increased the scale of her work, and she's really advanced her perspective around what it means to be an artist in our community, and is thinking more about her work from a place of sculpture. So as I mentioned, the artists had done a number of community engagement sessions to help inform their design. They didn't come to the table with a proposed design. They actually wanted to use what they gathered at the community level to inform their design. And one of the things that we realized was that Erie is going through a notable change right now, and it has been over the last few years. And as we work to become the best version of ourselves, sometimes that means needing to see things with a different perspective, whether it be see our opportunities with a different perspective, see our communities with a different perspective, or even see our neighbors with a different perspective. And that was what informed this project. So the artist statement that I'm about to read was actually provided by Shasti, and it Kaleidoscope Grove is comprised of two sets of three trees ranging between 6 and 7 feet tall. Kaleidoscope Grove is an installation of a functioning collection of open-ended three-sided kaleidoscopes, each pointed along 8 different axes, allowing people to see a multiplicity of different perspectives. Each tree is powder coated in different brilliant color to allude to the vibrance, diversity, and liveliness of the surrounding Erie neighborhoods. So the image in the background is actually what you see when you look through the channel, which is this kaleidoscope effect. And this image is of Kaleidoscope Grove. So there would be one of these clusters of three in a West Bayfront neighborhood and a cluster of three in a East Bayfront neighborhood. And the intention of that is to really try to create a relationship between these communities that have historically been quite divided, just because there's a one or two streets that divide us, right? It's like this division of State Street determines whether you're East Erie or West Erie, but then there's this mentality of division that has also long existed within our community. And by having these sister sculptures, we're hoping that we can bridge that some. And as Shasti mentioned in her artist statement, there's 8 different axes that you will be able to engage with on each of the 3 trees that are part of one of the clusters. The artist was really intentional about thinking about the height of each one of those channels so that we make sure that both children as well as individuals who might be seated in wheelchairs have the ability to engage with and participate with these sculptures. I participated in National Night Out in 2021 and set up to talk about these sculptures with our community. I did not complete a paper survey because I think sometimes our community can be a little surveyed out, but I made sure that I engaged people in conversations about this sculpture. So there were 2 primary questions that I asked. Where along the West Bayfront do you think this should be installed? And some of the suggestions that we provided in advance was the Bayview Park, Cascade Park, or Gridley Park. The other question that I asked individuals to think about was if they could assign 3 colors to their neighborhood, what would those colors be? And I collected hundreds of responses that night. And one, I want to say that folks were generally very excited about this project. People were excited by something that was bold and vibrant colors. They were excited about something that was interactive. They were excited about something that could be used as a teaching tool for science and mathematics and other things. And they were also just excited about it being a type of art that we don't presently have in our community. The overwhelming response that I received around location was Gridley Park. People felt that Bayview Park was receiving already a lot of attention and that there was a lot of things being installed down there between public art for Pontiac Field and the splash pad. And similarly, they felt like Cascade Park might not be enough foot traffic for something like this. So overwhelmingly, the response was Gridley Park for the West Erie installation point. As far as the colors are concerned, that was definitely a much broader range of responses, but it was really great to see people thinking about, how they would apply color to their neighborhood. So we're at a point now where the work has been not only designed, but actually fabricated. It was fabricated here in Fairview, and then it was sent to Buffalo for a powder coating, and now it is back in Fairview for some additional touch-ups. But the objective would be to install it sometime in the spring or summer of this year so that our community can actually start engaging with it. And that's the gist of all of this. I'm going to stop sharing my screen now so that I can actually go into conversation mode with Anna and answer any questions that you all as community members have maybe expressed to her, or any questions that she might have as the executive director of Our West Bayfront.
Thanks so much, Patrick. That was a great overview. And just to be clear, so Patrick is not going to be live when we're sharing this with you at the community gathering, but I'll do my best to answer questions in the moment and follow up afterwards with him as needed. As Patrick and I are chatting now, I do encourage you all to put any reactions or questions in the chat so that we can share that and think about those reactions as we move forward. So Patrick, I guess one question for you, maybe just to clarify a little bit, because you talk about, the name of the work is Kaleidoscope Grove. Can you just talk a little more about how people will engage with the artwork and sort of who you hope will engage with it as well?
Yeah, so with one of the things that a lot of research has shown is that cities need to be more playful. Communities need to be more playful. A lot of us, as we grow up, we forget how to play. We don't make time for it in our days. So something that is interactive and playful in the form of public art is really important. And it follows a lot of the national trends we're seeing about public art as it's designed and installed in communities. With this one, each of the 3 trees that comprise the Kaleidoscope Grove have 8 different, what I will call triangular tubes that run at 8 different accesses and are at different heights. And what the individual or the viewer does is they look through that tube, which has a mirror insert on all 3 sides, and they receive a kaleidoscope effect. So because of the angle and height of the tubes, some of them might be pointed at the trees, some of them may be pointed at houses, other member of a group can stand on the opposite side of, and you can see their face. So as you look through it, you get a kaleidoscope perspective of whatever you're looking at. So there's going to be, in total, with 3 trees and 8 different access points, there's going to be 24 different perspectives that you could receive by navigating around the public art and looking through all the different channels. And our hope is that everybody who walks by it finds a little bit of curiosity piqued to go, what is this thing, right? And then as their curiosity is piqued, they start to engage with it and find out that it's interactive and want to actually move around to the different tubes to see the different perspectives that they can experience. And as a kind of separate and smaller case study, recently City Gallery in downtown Erie had a large kaleidoscope that was designed and built by David Seitzinger, a prominent Erie sculptor, many years ago. And it was wildly popular for the month or so that it was up in their gallery, because it is this fun interactive thing. It creates moments for kind of selfies and other things. So it kind of engaged users of all ages. But I think in particular, with it being in Gridley Park, I'd also love to see school-age kids using it and teachers and parents using it as a tool for education. There's a lot of mathematics that go into something like this, but similarly, when you think about light and refraction and how it works with mirrors and perspective, there's opportunities for science as well. So even though this is a piece of art, it's kind of a STEAM-based piece of art.
That is awesome, Patrick. Thank you. And again, folks that are participating, please add your reactions, what excites you, what intrigues you about this in the chat right now as we're chatting. Patrick, another question I have is, you're very familiar with Gridley Park. As a West Bayfront resident, you've lived within a few blocks of the park now for several years, I believe. And as you're aware, it kind of serves different purposes within the community. It's sort of a neighborhood park. People walk their dogs around the park. It's a historic park, both in terms of how long it's been part of the city's plan and the monument right in the center of Liberty Street. And it also serves as a gateway to the city along 6th Street and Liberty Street. What do you feel a piece of art like this, adding this type of artwork to a park, what do you feel that what do you hope that does for not just the park, but for the community as a whole?
Yeah, first I want to build upon what you previously said. I have lived around Gridley Park at multiple times in my life. The closest I lived to it was probably 5th in Liberty. but I've lived at 2nd and Liberty, 7th and Walnut. I'm an avid walker and runner, so I use that park quite often. I still live in the West Bayfront, though I'm not as close to Gridley Park as I was just this time last year. As far as what I hope that it adds to the park is, I think every community needs to ask themselves, how are we paying homage to our past while imagining what we can be in the future? How are we becoming the best version of ourselves that we want to be when we think about the livability qualities of our communities? And there was a survey that was conducted by the Knight Foundation in, I want to say it was maybe 2012, that looked at why do people choose to live where they live. And this was, I think, 45,000 people completed this survey. And you would maybe think that it was the quality of the school district, the public safety. There's certain things that you might think climb to the top of the list. But the number one thing that led to why people choose where they live is aesthetic of place. It's the parks, it's the green spaces, it's the public art that they have access to. And community members want to be engaged in these ways, especially as we're thinking about how do we reverse disinvestment that we've seen in our communities. We have to create these emotional bonds between our neighborhoods and the people that live there. And one way that you can do that, I think, is to pique their curiosity, to invite them to play, but also create opportunities for them to gather together and have a shared experience. What happens if two strangers meet at this sculpture and they have a conversation about the experience that they have? Where does that relationship go from there? So I think that for me, while I love all forms of public art, and I think monuments are certainly a part of a public art collection, I do want to see new and more imaginative and more interactive pieces of public art added within our city's landscape. And I want those to be things that bring people together for shared experiences, where then hopefully bonds are created between both them and their neighbors, and then them and the communities in which they live.
Sorry, I was muted. Thank you. And one final question, Patrick. You've had a lot of experience working in Erie and then also in places all around the country. Can you think or share an example similar to this, where an exciting, new piece of public art has been installed within a community setting and within a neighborhood setting, and kind of what has been the outcome from that?
Yeah, to try to think on one particular piece that's in a specifically more of a residential area, I'd have to rack my brain a little bit, because there's so many different projects that I'd want to point to and say this thing about that project and this thing about that project. But I will say, I've worked on a number of different public art projects over the years. Well, I actually have one that we can point to from last year. It's not sculptural, though. Last year we led a project where we did a mural on the side of the former Wayne School, which is now the Erie Center for Arts and Technology. And that was a mural that was dedicated to Carla Hughes, who unfortunately passed away earlier that year. And Carla was an incredible educator in our community. She was a strong advocate for equity in our community. She was an amazing artist in our community. And we had an opportunity to do a mural in honor of her. And we selected some pictures that were sent to us by different folks who knew and loved Carla. And we selected an image that I think captured her likeness the most. And when we first started doing and we also, I should say, we engaged Carla's family very closely in that project. We were about halfway into the project, and one of Carla's family members, her brother Joe, contacted me. He said, Patrick, I'm having a hard time with this. Every time I drive by it, it's just too hard, because Carla was holding up a peace sign in the photo. And what Joe shared with me is that when Carla would leave, she would always do this. And what it reminded Joe of is that he didn't get to say goodbye to his sister. So as he was driving by this piece, he was having some real difficult time sitting with the trauma and grief he experienced in her passing. And he said, is there any way that we can remove the hand? I don't want to change the mural. I just wonder if we can remove the hand. Can we get rid of the peace sign? And we only had about 2 days left on the project, and the artist that was working on it had to head out of town. And I said, I can't make any promises, but I can ask. And, I started to engage the artist, and started having these really critical conversations about what does a pivot look like 3/4 of the way into the project, because I really wanted to make sure that we weren't doing any harm. any project we do, we don't want to do harm. And, we're starting to develop what is this contingency plan. And then all of a sudden I get a call again from Joe and he says, don't change it. It's beautiful the way it is. And it's helping me really kind of come to terms with this. And as a result of it, like when we dedicated that mural, we had hundreds of people come out that day to participate in the dedication of that mural. We had kids walking by that were talking about how great it was to see art in their neighborhood because they weren't used to seeing it in their neighborhood. We had folks stop by who had either worked with or been educated by Carla and shared with us memories of her. So you saw these communal stories starting to be told around this piece. And mind you, a mural in memorial of somebody is very different than a sculpture, right? And I understand that. But the point is it can serve as a catalyst for other things within the community. It can start to serve for this, these deeper conversations, these robust conversations, these relationships to be built, but also for people to start to see their neighborhood differently. If you start to see investments being made in your neighborhood when you've seen investments being made elsewhere, you start to have a greater sense of pride in your neighborhood. And I would like to think that if children in the neighborhood start to see these interactive, fun, playful pieces being installed in their neighborhood, even if it's just 2% more, they'll have a greater sense of pride of where they're living and where they're growing up. And they'll have a greater sense of ownership and protection of that as well.
That's beautifully put. Thank you. And we thank you for all the work that you've done with us in the West Bayfront community. You've been involved in a number of projects here in the West Bayfront neighborhood. And as you mentioned, this you could have gone anywhere with this project, but you intentionally decided to choose West Bayfront and East Bayfront locations for this particular project, which I think is very exciting. So I'm going to wrap it up here and thank you for
worth sharing too that for the east side one, it's going to be in Nate Levy Park. I don't think I mentioned that. So we were really looking at Nate Levy and Griswold as these bookends between East and West Bayfront neighborhoods.
Right. Well, thank you again for sharing this. And we're hoping, I believe, that this project gets installed this spring as soon as the weather cooperates a little bit and the powder coating is all finished. So again, we're taking comments and questions now and then following this meeting, and we'll keep folks updated on the progress. Thanks, Patrick, for your time.
Thank you.